Hi.
Hi, hello.
Good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Good morning, maybe. Depends when you're listening. So we're hoping that you liked the first episode, Something Wicked This Way Comes. And we're now on season 1, episode 2. I've got you under my skin.
So it looks like there's been some conversations happening in the background since the last episode around sort of situations that they have to use their powers in or shouldn't be using their powers in. My understanding of it changed throughout the episode. I thought that the agreement was that none of them would use their powers unless they absolutely had to. And then I thought, from something Prue said, I thought it meant that only Phoebe couldn't use her powers, and that's because she can see into the future. And the reason I say that is it looks like both Phoebe and Prue have been kind of breaking the rules in the background. The only one that doesn't seem to have been is Piper. We'll talk about why that is in a little bit, but what was your understanding of the agreement they had?
Yeah, so at the end of the last episode, they said that they're going to be careful and they're going to stick together. But yeah, there's definitely some conversations that are going on in the background that we see throughout this episode and hear about throughout this episode.
So what was the first scene then?
We first start in Quake. So you see a busy crowd. We see Phoebe through the crowd and she goes to Piper. Piper is wound up. She is fretting and she starts ranting about Chef Moore and how him and his phony French accent hired her and then quit. And now she's left with managing a restaurant, which she knows nothing about. She's a chef, not a manager.
Yeah.
They then get interrupted by a lady called Brittany, and she has a tattoo on her hand, which is pointed out by Phoebe, and she says, I thought this is illegal to get it on your hand because the ink. And Brittany says, it is in the US. I got this done in...
I can't remember where.
Began with a T.
Turkey?
No. I'm going to say Tunisia, but it's not even that. It'll come to me.
I got it done in Tahiti.
They then ask how Max is and have a little bit of a catch up, and then she says she's got to go.
So you're introduced to her as a character.
Yeah, as their friend.
Later
yeah,
in the episode.
You then move on to Phoebe getting a small premonition about a guy coming over to talk, and she says to Piper, see that guy over there, his name is Alec, is going to come over and ask if he can buy me a martini. She starts panicking and says, you can't use your powers. We agreed not to use our powers. And Phoebe's like, well, I can't help it. Mine just come to me. It just pops into my head. It's not like I can control it. And this is where Piper says,
that's the whole point. None of us can control our powers. That's what scares me. I could panic and freeze the entire restaurant.
So she's panicking quite a bit regarding the new powers. We then move on to seeing Brittany again, and Brittany is now going to her car, and she gets in the car, she adjusts her rearview mirror, and then you see a man in the back seat. She screams.
She gets attacked.
And the scene ends.
It's very late 90s horror movie. You know, the man's in the back of the car.
It's very my style.
Yeah.
Slasher chic. I like that. Very tongue twisty. Slasher chic. It's quite funny to say. Try it.
Slasher chic. It sounds like a she sells.
She sells seashells on a seashore. I hate tongue twisters. They're so fun. The next scene, Prue is sneaking out of Andy's apartment.
I like this bit. This is what threw me off. And at this point, I still thought it was all three of them had agreed not to use their powers. And I thought if anyone was going to push that rule and abide by it, it would be Prue.
But what you actually see is Prue throw Andy's alarm clock out the window when using her powers.
Which is why I kind of thought, oh, well, is it that it's only Phoebe that can't use her powers? Or is this supposed to be indicating that all three of them are kind of breaking their own rules and having a bit of fun with their powers? Which I won't lie, I'd probably do the same if I had powers.
The thing is, I agree with Phoebe. Phoebe can't control hers.
Yeah.
The visions. She can't control when she gets a vision. Prue can control when she uses her powers.
Mm. And yet she's the one that's really pushed that we have to be really careful where we use these things and only use them for good and that.
She's the older sister. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Once Andy tries to hit the alarm clock that is no longer there because it's now out the window, the theme song starts and the title
We get the opening.
begins, and the opening title begins. So after the title, we then hear Natalie and Bruno torn as they're going through Seattle.
I don't know. It looks like.
No, San Francisco. And then it pans to the manor where Piper is watching a witch documentary, and Prue walks in and they have a conversation about Prue's date with Andy and if it went well. And Prue said that, yeah, it did go well, the date. And then they slept together and Piper called her a sleaze.
I thought you were going to say something else.
I'll repeat what Piper says. If she called her something else, I'd have repeated that. But no, she called her a sleaze. Piper is very motherly, but she's very sweet and innocent. So the word that you thought I was going to use only probably comes out of my mouth in later episodes. But she calls Prue a sleaze, and Prue says it's not like it was our first date. And this way you find out that Andy and Prue dated in high school. So you get a little bit of Prue's background. Then Phoebe comes downstairs as they're talking about Prue and Andy having sex. And Phoebe and Prue was told Piper she's a big mouth. And Phoebe was like, you was going to tell her, but not me. Whoa, family meeting. Wanting in on the gossip, which I don't blame her. I'd feel left out too. They then change it to Phoebe, and Prue says, what time did you come in last night? And Piper was like, well, it was more like early hours, but she was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And Phoebe was like, well, I guess I was still on New York time. And Prue was like, well, that actually makes it later. And so Phoebe just rolls her eyes and is like, well, they then spoke about the premonition, then said to Prue that she doesn't regret what she did. And then Prue was like, well, we agreed not to use our powers. And Phoebe said, no, you agreed, you laid down the law. So this again brings back that it was actually Prue that states nobody's allowed to use the powers, even though she used them in Andy's apartment, which was quite funny. And then Prue says that she's not ashamed of what her and Andy did. We then go to the police station in which Max, who, if you remember from the beginning, is Brittany's partner.
Yeah.
They vaguely mention Max in passing, and I'm guessing it's because of the scene.
Right.
So Max is there to telling Andy and his partner that he's not seen Brittany. It's not like her. She never not comes home, and she always keeps in touch. And they said they'll keep an eye out. And as Max leaves, Andy says that's 4 missing women now. So they're more than aware that women are going missing in that area.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, they were looking at witches going missing.
In the last one. And now it's just women.
Now it's just women.
Yeah.
So we're kind of seeing, because one of the cops are very open to the idea of witches and magic and, visits an occult shop to ask questions and that kind of thing. And then the other is no, there's no such thing as magic, witches, anything like that. This is clearly a serial kidnapper or serial killer. So we're kind of, with this episode, I don't think there's any kind of supernatural investigation going on by the police. It's just
a standard kidnapping on this occasion.
Yeah, that will change by the end of the episode based on what they'll find, but...
We then move from the police station to Piper sitting in a van staring at a church. The pastor comes up to her and asks if she's okay, and she mentions about Mary Esty, the witch on the documentary, and whether he believes if witches are good or evil.
Actually, no, she says, do you think that it's true that evil beings can't enter a church?
And she goes, I like lightning.
He asks, like vampires?
Yeah, and she says, no, witches. And he said, let's put it this way, I wouldn't try if I was them.
Yeah.
So he walks off and says, I'll see you later. And Piper gets out of the van, and you see her go up the steps, and you see her very, very slowly putting her hand towards the the door handle, and as she goes to crack it, lightning strike.
And it scares the crap out of her as she runs off.
Yeah.
So, the seeds for that were kind of set in the scene where she was watching the documentary.
Yeah, you can tell by her face that she's scared, that she doesn't know if she's good or bad. But you see more of that later in the episode.
Well, the narrator in the documentary basically says that the witch was evil and
To stake her.
yeah, and witchcraft is evil. So Piper's obviously got it in her head that they could be bad, they could be good. Where have their powers come from?
Well, she doesn't understand, does she? She's not read the Book of Shadows yet. She's conflicted. She doesn't know who she is anymore.
Yeah. So, the interesting thing about it is you've got 3 points of view, don't you? You've got Prue, who has said that we need to be very conservative with the powers, hide them, don't have fun with them, never use them to kind of aid yourself, only use them when you absolutely need to. Then you've got Phoebe, who's sort of, no, let's just have fun. Let's do whatever we want with these things. We're very lucky to have them. And then you've got the other perspective of Piper, who isn't quite sure if she wants those powers at all.
But this is where you see Prue is the oldest, laying down the law. Piper is the middle, where she's unsure, she doesn't know what to think or do. And then Phoebe is the reckless youngest.
Yeah.
So you can see in their personalities, they take on the trait of which sister they are.
Yeah.
The next scene is at Buckland, which is a auction house. We then see Prue rush in. She drops something on the elevator and she runs into the elevator. She drops something on the floor and she panics. There's this gentleman in there that's dressed in like a denim shirt and tries to help her. Her cell phone then rings in the lift and it's Andy. She feels uncomfortable because she's in a lift full of blokes and she's like, well, yeah, I'm late for this job interview. It's just stuff at the auction house. I don't know why they've called me. And this is because she's feeling embarrassed because Andy's on the phone. And then he says, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. We made love last night. And she's like, I know, Andy. And then he says that they've known each other for 7 years. And she's like, I know. He keeps telling her stuff. And then she says that she didn't sneak out. She did write a note. She just didn't leave it. And then the cell phone reception goes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We then move to Quake, where...
So she uses her powers again, doesn't she?
Oh, yes. Yeah, she does. She uses her powers in the lift, where she zones in on her floor 12, as the doors are opening on floor 8.
She's wanting to get to the top floor.
She's embarrassed because she's in a lift full of men that are now staring at her, and she just wants to get to an interview. So she uses the powers and zones in on floor 12, and everyone's like, oh, it's get to my floor, and they're all trying to press the buttons. And then the guy tried to help her in the beginning, says, must be your day. And she says, yeah, I'm charmed, all right. And walks off. So that's a reference to be one of the charmed ones. We go back to Quake, and in Quake, you see Phoebe dressed as a waitress in a white shirt and black trousers. Goes to go past this gentleman and she says, Stefan, you're Stefan. And he's like, do I know you? And she's like, no, I just know your work. He sat at a bar with this lady with red hair, and he's telling Phoebe she's attractive, and she's like, I don't think your girlfriend is too happy. And he says, it's not my girlfriend. And the redhead gets upset and leaves. Before Stefan runs after her, he tells Phoebe that he would love to photograph her. So this is when you know he's a photographer.
Yeah.
Asks if she's a model, and her response was, only in my dreams. So he then writes his address on the napkin and says, I'll see you soon. As she walks off, Piper grabs her, tells her there's one of the delivery drivers has called in sick, can she help? And she asks, is there a man at a bar staring at me? And she says, a lot of men at the bar are staring at you. And Phoebe was like, no, this one's like tall, dark, very New York. Piper looks and says, no, sorry, and runs off. And Phoebe looks and he's gone. Back to Buckland's, the auction house. Prue is talking to this lady that is taking her to an interview. They're talking about Roger and why he's not got anything nice to say. And she explains that it was her ex-fiance. And then she mentions, I never applied for this job. They contacted me. And the lady said that, yeah, we're familiar with your work. They're really impressed with what you've done at the museum. Prue walks in the door to meet Mr. Buckland, and it is the gentleman from the
elevator.
The elevator.
Yeah.
And he says to Prue, welcome to my stuffy old auction house.
Oh, awkward.
So that got a bit awkward. The girl from the bar with red hair shouts, Stefan, no, Stefan, please. And he says, it's not Stefan, it's Javna. And then you see this old-looking demon dude with proper bald spot and grey hairs, proper little comb over. And red lasers come out the eyes and shoots into her eyes, proper Superman style. And she shrivels to an old lady, and then it pans to him, and he becomes a young Stefan.
So it's a demon that can sap your youth.
And takes it as his own.
Yeah.
And then we go back to Buckland's. Prue is being questioned for this job interview. So she said it's all in a resume and things are a little tense. And she then basically says to him that it's not fair to eavesdrop on make judgments on a private conversation, because that's not who she is. He then says that he wants someone that's actually interested in the job and that will work hard for the job. She turns to leave. They shake hands. She turns to leave, and then she turns back around and she says, "I may not have originally sought this job, but I do want it." She explains what her expertise is.
It was Ming Dynasty and something else. I
And
remember the other thing.
yeah, and she basically says that she is interested, and she may not have sought it, but she is interested. That's where they leave it. You then go to outside the church again, where Phoebe and Piper are talking about sex on the first date, originally talking about Andy and Prue, and then Piper's on about they need to stop being so reckless, and Phoebe says, have you not had sex on the first date?
That's not what she means.
Piper got flustered, and then the pastor came up, hugged Phoebe, had a little conversation with Phoebe, and then said that she's going to go and get some gum. Does anyone want anything? We then move on to the pastor and Piper, who again wants to question about witches. She says that she knows a friend who thinks she's a witch, and she's conflicted on whether she's good or not, and the pastor believes it's who they believe they are and what's within them. You then move to Phoebe, and Phoebe's getting some gum, she's paying, and this old couple are talking about whether they should use the grandkids' birthdays, and explain to Phoebe that they're going to try the lottery. If not, they're going to lose the house. Phoebe looks at the lottery ticket where you put the numbers in. She gets a vision of the lottery numbers, and she says to the old people, 4, 16, 19, 30, 32 and 40. They're the winning numbers. And the man at the stand is like, yeah, right, okay. But she says to the old people, you need to make sure you use these. 4, 16, 19, 30, 32, 40. And the old couple was like, okay. And they tick them off, and Phoebe brought one for herself.
With the same numbers.
And used the numbers that she saw in the vision. Her and Piper get into the van and drive off, and in the queue of the church is an old lady scratching her hand, and on that hand is the tattoo that Brittany has on her hand, and she's wearing the same dress with a long cardigan over the top. So we next go to Andy and his partner, who we find out is called Inspector Morris, and they're sat in a car staking out Quake, and Andy thinks that there's something more that's going on. He doesn't just think it's kidnapping. He thinks something else is going on, but doesn't know what. Just has a hunch there's something more. Obviously, Morris is the skeptical, and he's like, no, don't know what you're talking about. And then Andy sees Prue and goes to get out of the car. Morris is like,
you're going to completely blow our cover.
Don't think so, Romeo. You're going to completely blow our cover. Who do you think you are? And he's like, please, I just need to talk to her. And he's like, okay, got 5 minutes. We then go into Quake. Prue finds Piper, has a word, it speaks to Piper, and they both see Phoebe sat there, and Prue's like, is that an Armani dress? And Piper's like, well, it's not from my closet, so I don't know where she's got that from. And Phoebe's sat there talking to Stefan. Prue goes up to Phoebe and Stefan and asks if it's Armani. Phoebe says, don't worry, I didn't get it out of your wardrobe. And she says, I know, because I could never be able to afford that. And then says, right, we need to talk. And Phoebe gets up to leave. As they leave, there's a in-close shot of Stefan's hand going all wrinkly. So he's starting to go old again.
Yeah.
You go into the kitchen. Piper's already stressing, telling the busboy that he needs to make a move on. There's not enough plates. He needs to get a hurry on. And then Prue and Phoebe decide to go into the kitchen to argue. And they argue about using powers. Phoebe's like, okay, so it was a vision of lottery numbers. I can't control it. And Prue's like, well, we agreed that we wouldn't. And she was like, no,
You agree.
you agreed. Don't tell me you haven't used your powers. And Prue says, we're not talking about me, are we? So again, there's the Phoebe and Prue conflict going on. And then you've got Piper stood there like, now's not the time, guys. And she's stressing because the restaurant's really busy. And then Andy walks through the door and bumps into the pot wash, who then you just see a load of plates go out of his hand, and she panics and freezes the kitchen.
Yeah. Stopping the pots from breaking.
This is where you find out that Prue and Phoebe are immune to Piper's power. So they don't get frozen because they're good witches. Prue looks outside and says the rest of the restaurant isn't frozen. So that makes Piper panic even more. And then she looks out again and she's like, oh, Andy's partner's on his way. And they're like, stop him. So as Piper's panicking in the kitchen, Prue goes outside and says, like, Inspector Morris, hi. And it's like, have you seen Andy? She's like, no. And they make their way in the kitchen. As they go into the kitchen, the freeze naturally unfreezes and the pots go smashing on the floor.
Good timing.
And then Andy says, you gave me 5 minutes. And he says, no, I gave you 10. And they look at the watch. There's no way that's 10 minutes.
No.
Because we saw Prue walk in.
Yeah.
We saw her find Piper.
I thought that the moment that he goes into the restaurant, it's as if he gets out the car and follows him. He's like right behind it.
Straight away is right. So, okay. So even if it is a little while, I'd say that it's not 5 minutes between Andy leaving the car and getting to the kitchen, because we saw Prue go in, talk to Piper, get Phoebe and argue in the kitchen. And then Andy comes straight into the kitchen. That's probably 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, at most.
How, to me, I don't get the whole, it was 10 minutes. If something happened in between, you'd understand. Or if, like, someone collared Andy and moaned about a parking ticket or something, do you know what I mean? Or who knew who he was.
Yeah.
That would be a little bit different. But there was no reason for him not to catch up with him. For him getting to Prue was 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he was only frozen for what? A minute?
Yeah.
So that's nowhere near 10 minutes. It doesn't make sense.
Time obviously flows differently in this show.
I think in any form of TV shows, time doesn't exist. So the next scene is the next day. You're at the manor. Piper is in the attic this time with the Book of Shadows, and she's reading the Book of Shadows. Phoebe comes in and Piper explains how scared she is. She says that it's so easy for Phoebe. She's always been very loose and carefree, and Piper doesn't know who she is anymore. She doesn't know if she's good or bad, if the powers are going to change her, if the warlocks are after him because they're bad. She doesn't know what to think.
There's been enough outside things as well, like the documentary saying witches were evil, and then the priest saying that witches should be hung.
Yeah.
there's been enough outside things to make her doubt that maybe they're the baddies instead of the buddies.
Well, the priest didn't say witches should be hung. He said if you go by the old Bible, witches should be hung.
Yeah. So,
But it's not what the priest believed.
no, but if you look at religion,
They don't believe in magic, and they believe magic is
there is evil.
It's
It's
the
dark.
work of the devil, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's the unknown, and Piper is terrified of the unknown. Phoebe basically says, "You're the sweetest and most caring person that I know. You're always there for people, including strangers. If anyone should be worried that they're going to go bad, it's me, right?" And it makes Piper smile. And then she makes Piper laugh even more by going, "I'm posing," and saying, "I'm off to get my picture taken," and does a very silly pose. After the scene in the attic, so we go to a restaurant where Andy and Prue are having lunch, and they're talking about the night before, and they're reminiscing of the good times on that night.
A really, really good sleep.
Yeah, okay. Let you believe that, babe. And then Prue's talking about how it's been 7 years and they're just jumping back where they left off and they need to take it more slowly. So she's basically panicking and telling him that she wants to slow things down. He says, "Okay, let's forget it happened." And she was like, "Do you want me to toss you a life preserver now or let you drown?" And he's like, "That's not what I mean. Let's pretend the other night didn't happen and start again." Andy and Prue are talking about how to move forward. Prue's cell phone starts ringing and Andy's pager starts beeping, and Andy says dating in the 90s. Dating in any form of time now that there are mobile phones and internet is crazy. I'm so glad that we're not in the dating scene anymore. The phone call for Prue is that Buckland want a second interview.
Yeah.
So she rushes off. She apologises and rushes off. Then we go back to Piper at the church. I love this scene. Piper stares at the church. She gets out of the van and she starts going up the stairs, and you see her slowly reaching out. She opens the door. She puts one foot in and then one foot out. And then she steps in. And then she comes back out, massive smile on her face. And then she goes, "I'm good!" So she's so happy that she is not the devil incarnate and that she is a good witch. She then sees this frail woman looking at her, and she goes up to her very motherly and looks at the hand and says, "Brittany."
She notices the tattoo.
Yeah, she looks at the hand, sees the tattoo and says, "Brittany." And the woman says, "You know me? Is that who I am?" And it's like, oh. And you get a flashback of Brittany with the hand tattoo and the dress that she's wearing. We then go to Butlins. Not Butlins. We don't go to Butlins. Butlins is a holiday place in England. We do not go there. We go to Haven. Same company now. We go back to Buckland's
For the interview.
for the second interview. Mr. Buckland says, "We just want to call you back to test your expertise," and takes her to a photo painting, introduces her to Hannah, and
It sounds like his assistant or something.
yeah, or partner.
She's really standoffish to Prue straight away.
Very standoffish. She's very up her nose. She looks Prue up and down, and she's very snooty.
Yeah. She doesn't like that Prue figures
No,
out
was
the
duff.
first painting
So
copy.
Yeah, so she says, "This is." Oh my god, I don't even know any painters that bad.
I can't remember the name of the painting.
Monet.
I don't know, but she says something about the there's no yellow.
It'll be 2 to 3 million easy if it wasn't a copy. And she says, "How do you know it's a copy?" And she says, "It's yellow, there's no yellow in it, it's well preserved, and the wood is pine. They didn't use pine back then." And then they move on to the statue, and she said the name of the statue, "Forgive us, we are not art enthusiastic people, so we do not know the names of these statues and paintings and artists." But she basically said this is the one that he put into an exhibit himself. And then you see Hannah knock the ladder with a hip, and you see this tin of paint come down, and Prue lifts her hands up, and then you get the twinkle of magic noise and
The paint
very
moves all-
bad CGI paint curving splats. And I love it because they make a point of splatting on Hannah's shoes. Rex was like, "Oh, are you okay?" And Prue's like, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, you know your stuff, you're hired." And Prue thanks them and walks off. Rex says to Hannah, "What do you think?" And she says she's either the luckiest woman or she's a witch. So straight away, you know something isn't right with those two.
I wonder if she'll turn out to be a warlock in a feature episode. That'd be cool.
Maybe. You'll have to see. We then go to the manor. Prue walks in. Piper advises Prue that the old lady sat on the table is Brittany, and explains that she's got the hand tattoo, but also she's asked questions that only Brittany can know. She may be senile, but it's enough to convince Piper she is Brittany.
Yeah.
You then see Phoebe get out of a van, go to a metal door, knock on it, grabs the handle, and then she has a vision of herself tied up on a table,
Similar to Brittany.
and well, similar to the redhead. It was the redhead girl from the bar.
Ah.
And then sees an old guy in laser beams. So she throws the dress, panics. So she gets back into her van, and then all you see is a hand grabber, and she screams. The next scene, we're back at the manor. Prue and Piper are in the attic with the Book of Shadows. And Piper says that she's found something on a demon called Javna, who comes out once a year to feed on women and the youth. And there is a spell in the Book of Shadows called Hand of Javna. We then go back to the kitchen where Brittany is in the kitchen, and she goes to the fridge and she collapses because she sees Javna's address on a napkin. They ask Brittany if everything's okay, and she says Javna with the napkin in her hand. And
They figure out Phoebe's gone to.
Piper says that's where Phoebe's gone to be photographed by Stefan. So the next clip is we're watching CCTV of Quake, where Stefan is coming out with the first victim, and Andy and Morris are talking about this is the first victim, the scene with the second victim, and Morris asks Andy if this Stefan photographer is on their suspect list, and Andy says he's just made it to the top of their list. We go to Phoebe, who is now strapped to the table like she was in her vision. While Phoebe's strapped to the table, you see Piper and Prue jump out the car and rush to the door, and they're thinking, do we wait for the police? And then they hear Phoebe scream. And at this point, Javna is got laser beam eyes on Phoebe, who's screaming. Javna, Superman laser beam Phoebe's eyes, and Prue comes in, uses the power to knock him out of the way. Piper goes to help Phoebe and unties her from the table as this is happening. Javna laser eyes Prue. Prue starts coming forward. Phoebe shouts, "Use the mirror." And there's the mirror on the table that you saw in a scene with the redhead where he goes young. Prue picks it up, turns it reflectified to Javna, and the laser beams go back to his eyes.
The reflected back with the mirror.
Then what happens is that the sisters get together, they chant,
"Evil eyes look unto thee, may they soon extinguish be. Bend thy will to the power three, eye of earth, evil and accursed."
and Prue's hand goes really weird with like snakes and stuff, and a light shines out of it. And then they repeat,
"Evil eyes look unto thee, may they soon extinguish be. Bend thy will to the power three, eye of earth, evil and accursed."
And then the light blasts and Javna turns to dust. Just after that happens, Andy and Morris pull up into the car park as the girls leave the building, and they're like, "What are you guys doing here?" And they're like, Phoebe's car broke down, but he needs to help rescue her.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, have you seen Stefan? Stefan is the kidnapper." And they're like, "No, not seeing him." And Andy looks very skeptical. He does not believe them at all.
he's seen the cat, hasn't he, as well?
Yeah.
In episode 1, at the end of episode 1. So he's got reason to kind of think these three are a bit strange.
And Prue basically says to Andy, call me. And then the next thing, we're going to Quake, where the girls are sat there talking about Javna and Stefan, and the lottery numbers come up, and Phoebe digs out the lottery ticket, and as the numbers are called, the lottery numbers vanish off a ticket, and Prue says,
Told you
you can't use it for personal gain. And she says, at least I kept the tags on the dress. And that's where that episode ends. So what did you think to that episode?
I really like this episode. I like this episode more than the first one. Simply because the premise of, a monster that steals youth is quite interesting.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we saw it too much though. There was one person that we saw, well, potentially two, that we saw get de-aged. I don't know how long the episode was.
Every episode is about 40 minutes long.
40 minutes. I feel like this was maybe, I don't know. I feel like they could have done more with it, but in 40 minutes is not too much you can do.
I think for a family episode, for a family series, thinking back, a family series that talks a lot about sex. So it is aimed for like teenagers and families in that sense, like mums and daughters. But for a family show, I think it had enough suspense with the two abductions of a car. But I think you found out who Stefan was too quickly in the episode.
Yeah.
I think they should have kept who he is a secret until Phoebe's vision.
I think him being I know he said he was just a photographer as well, and there was no kind of romantic stuff between him and Phoebe. But I feel like the villains of the first two episodes are very similar in some ways as well, where they've kind of tried to sneak their way in and be friendly with them first, rather than just straight up being a villain.
I think that's the point with these, is that they're trying to show how sneaky and manipulative evil can be.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of evil people out there, and they're not straight up, I'm a villain. Like, look at Ted Bundy. He's so charismatic. Whatever. He's got charisma, and if he was straight up evil, he wouldn't have been able to kill so many women.
So with this one then, because I know that they said in episode 1 that warlocks would seek them out for their powers. This one didn't seem to be seeking them out for their powers.
He didn't know
anyone. Yeah.
He didn't know that she was a charmed one. He just sought out women.
Yeah,
for his feeding for the youth.
Yeah, so it just so happens that he's messed with the wrong
woman. Yeah, don't mess with the power of 3, because you'll get dusted. Okay, have you got any favourite parts of this episode?
I really like the alarm clock at the start, just because, it being thrown out the window, there's going to be people walking by.
Get knocked on the head with an alarm clock.
Yeah, probably wondering why this random alarm clock has just come flying out of a window.
That reminded me of the joke I told you the other day.
What joke?
The Irishman, Englishman, or Scottishman.
Yeah.
I will not repeat that unless people want me to.
What about you?
My favourite part was Piper in the church, when she screams, I'm good! I love that. And Phoebe has a few comical lines in it as well. But yeah, so I think you saw a bit more of Phoebe and Prue's conflict.
Yeah.
And more sibling bitching. Well, it's not rivalry, it's definitely sibling bitching.
It kind of is. It's sibling rivalry with the volume turned up.
No.
Sibling rivalry if you gave them superpowers.
Sibling rivalry is when you're fighting over something and you're fighting for attention. They're not fighting for anything, they're just gunning for each other. And they're arguing for the sake of arguing because they're sisters. And then you got to see more of Piper being the middle child, like when they're arguing about the powers when they're at the manor. Phoebe and Prue are bickering, and Prue tries to get Piper involved, and Piper said, "Don't put me in the middle," and Prue said, "You was born in the middle." So that's them basically saying that Piper is the middle sister, whether she likes it or not, she has to come in between these two.
She's the glue.
But you'll find that as seasons go on, you'll see them develop into people and you'll see the characters develop even more. Thank you for listening.
Looking forward to the next episode. Do we know what the next one's called?
It is called Thank You for Not Morphing, I think.
I think that comes after the one we're about.
No, I don't think it does.
We can check that right now.
Please hold. Thank you for not morphing.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Don't ever test me.
Well, we'll be back with Thank You for Not Morphing.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.